imagine having it all, being the literal richest person on planet Earth, and then losing it, almost overnight. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the most fascinating, terrifying, and honestly chaotic figures in modern business, Masayoshi Son, the founder of SoftBank. We really have to ask, is this guy a visionary genius who can spot the next tech revolution before anyone else? Or is he just a reckless gambler who treats the global economy like his own personal casino? Let's dive in, because his story operates on extremes that are almost impossible to comprehend.
To really understand the sheer scale at which Masayoshi Son, or Masa as he's usually called, operates, you just have to look at this number: -$70 billion. Back in the year 2000, Masa was riding so high on early internet bets that for 3 whole days, he actually passed Bill Gates to become the richest man on the planet. But then, the dot-com bubble burst. The market absolutely crashed, and Masa lost $70 billion. It is still the largest personal financial loss in human history. For any normal person, getting wiped out like that would absolutely be the end of the road. But Masa, he's just not wired like the rest of us.
Now, flip the script and contrast that staggering loss with this equally mind-blowing win. Years after that crash, Masayoshi walked into a meeting to pitch a new investment fund. 45 minutes later, he walked out with a commitment for $45 billion in funding. Just do the math on that for a second. That is literally $1 billion a minute. It's an absolutely unprecedented level of capital. How does a person even get into a position to make and lose money at this kind of scale?
Well, part 1, from outsider to millionaire. To get how he operates at these wild extremes, you really have to understand the fierce determination that came from his incredibly unlikely beginnings. Growing up as a heavily bullied, impoverished outsider of South Korean heritage in Japan, Masa was just desperate to build a better life. When he was in middle school, he idolized Den Fujita, the guy who brought McDonald's to Japan. So Masa flies all the way to Tokyo, demands a meeting, and Fujita actually gives him 15 minutes. He tells young Masa 2 things: focus on computers and go to America. Masa doesn't hesitate. He packs up, moves to California at 16, and eventually maps out this absolutely audacious 50-year life plan. Start a company in his 20s, build real wealth in his 30s, deploy that massive money in his 40s, tie up loose ends in his 50s, and hand the empire over in his 60s. I mean, who plans their entire life out like that as a teenager? And the crazy part is, he actually executed it. While he was studying in California, Masa needed cash, but he flat out refused to get a regular job. Instead, he set this goal to make $10,000 a month working just 5 minutes a day. His friends totally thought he had lost the plot, but his solution was to dedicate exactly 5 minutes every single day to inventing things using a super simple 3-part framework. First, search for personal daily problems. Second, look at things from the opposite perspective. And third, combine existing things. By combining a dictionary and a calculator, he invented a pocket-sized digital translator. He sold that patent to Sharp for $1.7 million. At just 19 years old, Masa was officially a millionaire. Moving on to part 2, building the SoftBank empire. Masa eventually returns to Japan to put his grand plan into motion, but a major brush with death would permanently change his psychology. He ended up surviving a severe bout of chronic hepatitis. Doctors told him he might not have much time left, and that convinced Masa he had 0 time to waste. That newfound urgency, it led to some extreme, uncompromising negotiation tactics. For instance, by 2001, he was trying to break into the Japanese broadband market, but kept hitting massive regulatory brick walls. So what does he do? He barges into the Japanese government's telecoms office and literally shouts, "This is the end. If you don't help me, I'm going to pour gasoline all over myself and set myself on fire." Talk about an unhinged threat. But amazingly, it worked. He launched a heavily subsidized broadband service, taking on massive initial losses just to forcefully grab the market share he desperately needed. Which brings us to part 3, the best VC bet ever. By the late 90s, SoftBank had morphed into a massive venture capital machine, and Masa went hunting for a golden goose. He had this crystal clear vision of how the internet was going to completely change the world, and he was meeting with up to 200 entrepreneurs every 3 months. In the year 2000, he meets a former English teacher in China who's building an internet startup. The man's name was Jack Ma, and the startup was Alibaba. Jack Ma actually told Masa they didn't even need any investment right then, but Masa completely insisted. When he explained the decision later, Masa said he had no business plan, 0 revenue, but his eyes were very strong. He literally bet big purely on the persistence he sensed and the sparkle in Jack Ma's eyes. He trusted vibes over data. And the sheer scale of the return on that one gut instinct is just mind-bending. Masa put $20 million into Alibaba. Over time, that initial stake grew to be worth over $70 billion. Seriously, just let that sink in. It is widely considered to be the single greatest venture capital investment of all time. This one incredibly lucky or maybe incredibly visionary move firmly cemented Masa's reputation. Plus, it provided the massive financial cushion he needed to cover all his other failed bets over the years. But it wasn't just blind luck and gut instinct. Masa used a brilliant strategy he calls his time machine management theory. Basically, he viewed the United States as the future. If a tech trend was blowing up in the US, he figured every other country would eventually follow suit. So, investing in those same ideas globally was like stepping into a time machine and betting on a guaranteed future. A great example? He figured out Apple was secretly developing the iPhone. He actually met with Steve Jobs and asked for the exclusive Japanese rights. Jobs laughed at him because Masa didn't even own a phone carrier in Japan. Masa's response? He took on massive debt to buy Vodafone Japan for $20 billion just to secure that exclusive iPhone deal. It was an absolute masterstroke of predicting the future and aggressively building the infrastructure to profit from it. This perfectly sets up Part 4, the $100 billion vision. Missing out on early deals like Amazon really haunted him. He decided he needed a war chest with absolutely zero limitations so he could dominate the upcoming AI revolution. Masa set his sights on the vast wealth of Saudi Arabia. He knew Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was eager to invest in tech to diversify their economy, so Masa hops on a plane to meet him. On the flight over, he's reviewing his team's pitch deck, which was asking for a record-breaking $30 billion. But sitting there mid-flight, Masa decides it just isn't ambitious enough. He tells his team they have to aim higher and casually bumps the asking price up to $100 billion. To really wrap your head around the terrifying scale of what became the SoftBank Vision Fund, you have to compare it to the rest of the industry. A highly successful traditional venture capital fund might raise around $3 billion. The Vision Fund was $100 billion. It was more than 4 times larger than any other fund in human history. At this point, Masa wasn't just participating in the market anymore. He had enough capital to completely consume it. And that brings us to our final section, Part 5, Visionary or Reckless Shark. Because when you deploy $100 billion into a single ecosystem, you aren't just picking winners, you are artificially creating them. This dynamic has led to some intense criticism. First off, critics argue Masa inflates extreme tech bubbles by dumping massive valuations on companies that aren't even really tech companies. Think dog walking apps. Second, he weaponizes capital. If a startup asks for $100 million, Masa might demand they take $500 million. In the industry, this is known as the kiss of death. Why? Because it forces founders into reckless, growth-at-all-cost spending, completely destroying any focus on sustainable profitability. And what happens if a founder refuses his money? Well, there are widespread accusations that Masa will explicitly threaten to take his billions and fund their direct competitor instead. He basically ensures they get outspent and crushed. The absolute ultimate cautionary tale of this high-speed, gut instinct gambling is WeWork. Masa took a 30-minute tour of a WeWork location. He didn't even bother to look at the financial pitch deck. Based purely on his feeling about the founder, he handed over $4 billion and told them to act crazier and grow faster. And we all know how that ended. A spectacular, highly publicized implosion that wiped out billions in value. It really proved that managing a $100 billion fund, based on those same 15-minute vibes that found Alibaba decades ago, can be incredibly, catastrophically destructive. So, what does this all mean? The truth about Masayoshi Son is a complete enigma. Is he a shrewd, unparalleled visionary who sees the AI future clearer than anyone else alive? Or is he a lucky gambler who is single-handedly manipulating markets and destroying the discipline of venture capital? Honestly, he's probably a bit of both. But whether you agree with his methods or not, you just have to respect the sheer scale of his ambition.